Day is not over just yet.
Woohoo! USA! USA!
We have an action-packed hour for you 6 p.m. drivers.
Would I rather be feared or loved? Easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
Matt Skraby wraps up a full day of live and local sports talk.
And that is the whole problem with aliens. You just can't trust them. Occasionally you meet a nice one, but usually they turn out to be some kind of big lizard.
The Skraby Show starts now on 97.3 The Fan.
Hello, welcome into the Skraby Show for Friday, October 18th. We're inching closer to Halloween. You know, as much as I love scary movies and as much as I love all that stuff, I have never actually been a big costume person. Like, for years, when I was a kid, it was so stressful trying to choose a cool costume because I don't know if it's going to surprise anybody out there. I used to get teased for, I don't know why I got teased, but I used to get teased, so I was always so worried that my costume was not going to be cool enough, and then kids are going to tease me and all of that stuff. I would like to tell old Matt Skraby, or not young Matt Skraby, nobody cares, bro. Nobody cares. So if you're sitting out there and you are listening to this and you say, man, I got to get a cool costume or else everybody's going to make fun of me. Nobody cares about what your costume is. Trust me on that. So, yeah, it is kind of strange that I am Mr. Horror Movie, but I do not like dressing up for Halloween. I am going to dress up for Halloween this year. I still don't know what I'm going to be, but I have a couple ideas in my mind, which as we get closer to Halloween, maybe I'll let people in on everything. Last year, I was the ghost of Brock Purdy because Brock Purdy was not very good in the beginning of the year. So I painted my face, I put on a 49ers jersey, and I called myself the ghost of Brock Purdy. This year, I don't know what I'm going to be today. Or, yeah, not today, but you know what I'm saying. Halloween. If you would like to watch the show, you can. Just go to YouTube, search 97.3 The Fan, or you can go to Twitch, 97.3 The Fan, X, at Matt Skraby, MattsKraby, as in boy, Y. And on the Skraby Show tonight, we're going to talk more about Jason Adam and this idea of possibly trading Jason Adam to keep Tanner Scott, which this article is calling them the Ohtani Vanquisher, which is kind of a cool name. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I do want to talk also about the Juan Soto Padres can be counted out of the race for Juan Soto and his $500 million. We're going to talk about that. Also, Jeff Sanders did put out a projection of the roster next year with a bunch of salary estimates. And yes, it's way too early for this, but Jeff Sanders did a great job. And so I want to go over that a little bit too, because there's some things that we can glean from that. And I want to get into the Angel Reese stuff just a little bit more in the final segment. So the final segment's going to be an all over a potpourri place, but the first couple segments are going to be about the Padres, and the first couple segments are going to be about this. I am starving right now. I forgot my dinner at home, and it's an SD fat loss dinner, so I can't just go and I can't just go and eat McDonald's after because, you know, I'm trying to keep my figure down. I'm trying to keep my weight down, but I saw a container in the trash, and it was a Chinese food container, and it made me want to eat Chinese food so bad. I love Chinese food. Growing up in the Bay Area, we had great Chinese food. There's great Chinese food down here too, but I would love to eat some Chinese food right now. I'm not going to because, you know, I got to keep eating right as the older I get. I don't know if anybody else feels like this, but the older you get, the less you can eat, less bad things you can eat because it will make you feel bad the next day. I think a lot of people are actually kind of like that. But, yeah. Rod said, Matt Skraby, look under the desk. You might find a cracker. Yeah, let's go into the cracker thing. Now, the crackers were in the refrigerator yesterday, and I really wanted to throw them away, but I'm not that type of person. I'm not evil in that way. I will not throw away Chris's crackers. But, yes, he did eat a cracker off the ground today, and I did call him out for it because it was disgusting. So I already looked I already looked, Rod. There's no crackers under my desk. So, yeah, there we go. Let's do the check-in right now. We got Nate, Katrina, Songstream, Rod, Thomas. Let's see, Castro, M. McKee, Brandon, and I know I'm missing people. Cesar. Cesar said, Ghost of Purdy. Was that the panda incident last year? Yes, I did look like a panda bear. And we also had Bob Melvin after everything went down with him not being the Padres manager. We had him on the show on Halloween last year. And so the ridiculous video of me in my Halloween costume while Bob Melvin is being interviewed is kind of funny. But we got Rod, Songstream, Hoser, and Junior is there. Nate number 2 is there. There's a lot of Nates in the chat. So thanks everybody for joining here. Again, you can go to YouTube, search 97.3 The Fan if you want to watch and be a part of the chat community. Now, let's get started with the Jason Adam, Tanner Scott thing. Now, let me start with this. I do know that this is a little bit of a fantasy trade move that I think, you know, in fake baseball, it sounds pretty good, but in real baseball, it's not as easy and straightforward as it seems because of salaries and all of that. But Bleacher Report put out an article, the most likely trade for all 30 Major League Baseball teams in the offseason, and they said that they should move Jason Adam, trade him, to keep Tanner Scott. Their reasoning is the Padres are, according to Joel Ryder of Bleacher Report, he ranked the Padres at number 28 in regards to farm system in baseball because the Padres moved a lot of their farm players to acquire Jason Adam and Tanner Scott and Brian Hoeing. But the main thought behind this would be, hey, you trade Jason Adam, you get some prospects back, you could build up your prospect system. AJ Preller, I have no worries about him building up the prospect system again because AJ Preller is really good at continually restocking the minor leagues. But you can get some prospects back, and you could also, if you're going to be able to trade Jason Adam, that means that Tanner Scott has a little bit more money that the Padres can throw at him. And when we get into Jeff Sanders and his breakdown of the roster and how much money people are making, I'm going to tell you about the, approximate total that we're looking at as a team next year for salary. And it is up from last year. But Jason Adam is projected to earn $5.3 million in 2025, which is kind of a steal. But the article is basically pinning this all on the fact that Tanner Scott is incredible against Shohei Ohtani. And so why not try and get Tanner Scott in a Padres uniform for a long time so that you have someone that can go up against Shohei Ohtani all the time. Now, in his career against Tanner Scott, Shohei Ohtani is 1 for 9 with 3 strikeouts, so he's 111. But Scott is a lefty, Shohei is a lefty, and so that matchup works great. And we saw during the playoffs, if you bring Tanner Scott in, he's going to be able to sit down Shohei Ohtani easier, maybe not easier, but he's able to get it done a little bit better than some of the other pitchers. And I do, again, know that this is a long shot, but I don't hate the thought behind it. I don't hate being creative and trying to find ways that Tanner Scott can stay with the team. As we said, I'm going to Chris. Chris wants Tanner Scott on the team. Tony wants Tanner Scott on the team. But we all think that Tanner Scott also wants to be a closer. And right here in Padre land, he's not going to be a closer. Now, maybe this is me just throwing things out there, but maybe there's some sort of agreement that goes into, between Robert Suarez and Tanner Scott. Whoever, if there's a bunch of lefties coming up in the 9th inning, then you go with Tanner Scott. If there's a bunch of righties in the 9th inning, you go with Robert Suarez. And we've known that Robert Suarez, we know that Robert Suarez is someone that's willing to do things for the team. We know that Robert Suarez has moved around a couple times this year to, the matchups that Mike Schilt and the Padres wanted. So he has pitched a couple 8th innings, and then you had Tanner Scott in the 9th inning. But in the end, Tanner Scott's going to be making a lot of money, And in the end, I don't think Tanner Scott wants to be a closer by committee. I don't think Tanner Scott wants to be just an eight inning guy. But I feel like Tanner Scott is going to be going on to bigger and better things. Again, I know this is a really, really far-fetched idea, but I do appreciate the creative thinking there. And I'm seeing on the chat right now, Trevor, we play them 13 games a regular season. I'm seeing Brandon saying 13 at-bats a year against Shohei doesn't sound worth it. One player doesn't make their team. I agree with that, Brandon, a little bit, and I agree I agree with that, Brandon, that one player doesn't make their team. But you got to think about Shohei Ohtani has 9 more seasons after this one in a Dodgers uniform. So the Padres are going to be facing him for 9 more years. And you have to find a way to stop Ohtani. And the Padres did find a way to stop Ohtani in the playoff series. For the most part, he hit that 3-run home run, but for the most part, he was pretty quiet in the series against the Padres. And a lot of that credit goes to Tanner Scott because Tanner Scott was able to get him out. Now, Tanner Scott said after, a couple of those games where he struck Shohei out, like, why are you the Shohei Ohtani whisperer? And he's like, oh, no, I just want to strike him out. I'm just trying to strike him out, which is what a pitcher should say. But deep down inside, he's got to feel pretty good knowing that one of the best hitters on the planet is not very good when he's on the mound. So, there shouldn't be a lot of time spent on strategy for Shohei Ohtani on his own. And what I mean by that is, yes, you're only playing the Padres or the Dodgers 13 times a year, and you may face them in the playoffs. But those playoff appearances between Tanner Scott and Shohei Ohtani were went in the favor of the Padres because they were able to acquire Tanner Scott at the trade deadline. And Tanner Scott we knew this the whole time. He was a rental. And there was little chance that the Padres are going to re-sign him. But we saw the benefit that it was to have Tanner Scott be able to get Shohei Ohtani out. Now, do I think this is going to happen? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen because, again, I think Tanner Scott wants to get closer money, and I think he wants to be a closer. And Jason Adam, I'm not mad at Jason Adam being on the team. Jason Adam was great for the Padres down the stretch. And Jason Adam is someone that's going to help this team next year. I felt really comfortable with Jason Adam on the mound this year. And I think a lot of other Padres fans did too. When they first traded for Jason Adam, there were a few people out there, including myself, like, wow, they paid a lot in prospect capital to get Jason Adam. And then Jason Adam came in and was completely effective most every time that he was called upon to pitch. And Jason Adam is no slouch, but he's not a lefty and he's not Tanner Scott. Nate says, we will find another lefty to shut down Shohei. AJ will find someone. I agree with that. Dan said Ohtani was 4 for 20 with 10 strikeouts in that series versus the Padres. Wow. If that's the correct numbers, that is pretty crazy that he had 10 strikeouts. He was only 4 for 20. He had a 3-run home run that kind of changed the game in game 1, but that's revisionist history at this point. The Mets ended up beating the Dodgers today, even though it was closer than I think a lot of people thought. It was 10-2 at one point, and then it was 10-5, and then it was 11-6, and then it was 12-6. So they go back to Los Angeles. They go back to game 6 of the series, and the Dodgers are up 3-2 games in that series. So they just need one more win to get to the World Series. And being on the Padres station, I'm just going to say this about the Dodgers. It's very, very, very annoying that all of a sudden their pitching has become this incredible unit that is unable to give up a run, that makes no mistakes, and that really annoys me. That's the irrational part of me. The part of me that says I hate that the Dodgers are playing well because all of a sudden their pitching is good. But still, there's 2 more games. The Mets have to beat them on the road, but the Mets have done some crazy things this year. And I guess that's my hope, is that the Mets are able to beat the Dodgers. I just don't want the Dodgers to win a World Series. That's really all I care about. And I hope that the Guardians beat the Yankees. That game right now, I believe it's still 3-1 with the Yankees leading in that one. So They have a couple. They're one game behind. I know they play again tomorrow, the Yankees and the Guardians, and then the Dodgers and the Mets are going to be playing on Sunday and Monday. So we're going to have our World Series teams here by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Most likely, I would think Tuesday. I'm not sure about Game 7 of the ALCS, so I'm going to say it's going to be next week that we know our World Series opponents, which isn't really a stretch for me to say. All right, Matt Skraby, Skraby Show, 97.3 The Fan. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for listening. Again, you can go to YouTube, search 97.3 The Fan. Just make sure you like the page. Also, you can listen on the Odyssey app. Just type in The Skraby Show, Skraby as in boy, Y. And when we get back, we're going to look at some of these salary options that Jeff Sanders put out there in his Union Tribune article about the 2025 roster. It has some omissions that I think we need to talk about. And also, is Juan Soto really counted out from being a Padre again? I think we all know the answer, but we'll talk about it next on The Skraby Show, 97.3 The Fan. Matt Skraby back with you here on the Skraby Show for a Friday. 97.3 The Fan. We went to break talking about Juan Soto for a second. And Juan Soto has already changed the game in the ALCS. It's game 4. He hit a big home run to start the game, and the Yankees currently lead 3-2 here in the top of the 4th inning. Anthony Rizzo at the plate for the Yankees. All right. So the Juan Soto stuff, I'll just get it out of the way real quick, because I said, do I think Juan Soto will be in a Padres uniform next year? No, I do not. And it's not because I don't like him, because BG on the chat had a pretty, fair comment. The Soto hate from SD Media is unreal. And I replied with, on the chat, again, you can go to YouTube, search 97.3 The Fan, look for the Skraby Show broadcast. But what I replied with is, it's not so much hate for me. Like, I don't hate the guy. He didn't do anything wrong. It's more of, I wish he would have been as good as he's been this year in a Padres uniform. We didn't get to see the Juan Soto that the Yankees fans saw this year. Juan Soto has been awesome this year. And honestly, if he was not Juan Soto, if he was just another really good player, then his time in San Diego would probably be looked upon a little bit fondly. But what we did as fans is we really thought that Juan Soto was going to change everything for the team. And maybe that's our fault. Maybe that's my fault. Maybe it's my fault that we put too much pressure on Juan Soto. And I wonder at times if there was a little bit of looking ahead by Juan Soto to this upcoming offseason, which is his free agent year. And I wonder if there was, not distraction, but I wonder if there was, what's the word? I wonder if there was sort of in the back of his mind, like, I'm not going to be a San Diego Padre. So I don't want to say that he didn't try as hard, because I know that's not true. But at the same time, his numbers tell us a whole different story. And he says, and people around him say, that he really liked to be on the big stage, which also kind of irks me, because you shouldn't need to be on a big stage to play well. I mean, you're getting paid tons and tons and tons of money to play well. It should not be because you're in New York. But he is, and he's doing great, and he's probably going to be re-signed by the Yankees, which is fine. Because honestly, I don't want to... The Padres can't afford to sign another long-term contract like that. Like Juan Soto, they're projecting his contract to be 14 years and over $500 million. Now, to me, that seems like a bad deal. That seems like a contract that will end up biting a team a little bit, but I think all teams have bad contracts. The Padres, in my opinion, maybe signed Xander Bogaerts for a little too much money and for a little too long, and that may come to bite them a little bit later on. But I don't think that the Padres would benefit from signing Juan Soto to a 14-year, $500 million deal. I just don't think that. It's the right move for the Padres. Like, I've always been a guy who likes to build with lesser named players that are all together going to play winning baseball. And not saying that Juan Soto's not going to, let me rephrase that. I'm not saying that Juan Soto won't win you games, because he will, but I would much rather spread salaries out, get a bunch of guys that are maybe contract controllable, and build upon that, because I think that's the way the Padres could do things. Padres are not going to spend $250 or $300 million on they wouldn't spend $250 or $300 million on their salary for the next year, because the luxury tax, or the competitive balance tax, which means if you're a team and your total salary goes over this number, you have to pay certain tax percentages. The first year, it's not so bad. It's 20% of your total salary. Then the second year, it's 30%. And then the third consecutive year, it's 50%. So that is where the Padres had to get under the competitive balance tax last year, because they were over it 2 years in a row. which if they went into it with their third year, they would have been paying 50% on top of that. So I'm just going to make my math easy. If the Padres payroll was $200 million, then they would have to pay an extra $100 million in tax because of the competitive balance tax. So the Padres are likely, according to Jeff Sanders, he did a really good job on this, and he used MLB trade rumors estimates as well, and the UT estimates. But they're saying Jeff Sanders is saying a total of $198.49 million for the Padres payroll next season, which is still a ton of money. Just so much money. And it's a lot more money than other teams. So I have to say that if this does indeed become the payroll, let's just talk about this like the payroll is going to be $200 million next year. I think that it shows that the Padres are still committed to winning, which I know that they are, but it also shows that they aren't so worried to me about it's not all about financial concern, because $200 million in a small market is still a lot of salary. So in the article from Jeff Sanders, Yu Darvish, this is no secret, he's making $21 million next year. So hopefully Yu Darvish can be very good for the Padres. Dylan Cease probably going to be making $13.7 million, which is a decent amount of money for Dylan Cease in his last year of arbitration. Michael King also in the last year of arbitration. He's going to get $7.9 million according to MLB trade rumors. And then to round out the rotation, Matt Waldron making $800,000, Randy Vasquez making $790,000. Now, when you look at the relievers, here's where I think it's a contract that's not too expensive, but in the first year of the contract, it wasn't great for the Padres, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what Yuki Matsui can do in the next couple of years, but he will be the second highest paid reliever on the team if we're saying this is the roster, with $5.5 million. Robert Suarez is at 10, and then you got Morejon is 1.8. Luis Patino also is eligible to come back, $800,000, and then Jeremiah Estrada and Brian Hoeing, $800,000 each as well. So the relievers, there's not much money tied up in the relievers outside of Yuki Matsui. Yuki Matsui is going to really I think Yuki Matsui he's going to need to turn it around next year to make the investment worth it for the Padres, because if you're not able to throw in higher leverage situations, then the Padres don't want to pay him $5.5 million. Now, here's some of the other things that I found interesting. When you look at the infielders, you're looking at Luis Ariz. They're projecting him at $14.6 million. Tyler Wade, they're projecting to come back at $900,000. Eggy Rosario, $760,000. Now, Manny Machado has a good contract for the Padres next year because he only makes $13 million in 2025, which is much less than what he will make in the future. He's going to be, his number incrementally goes up each year, and in a couple years, I think in 2026, he's going to be making around $40 million or more for the season. So if we're talking about windows, and we're talking about contracts and money and all that stuff, this next year is going to be very important because Manny Machado is only making $2 more million than Jake Cronenworth is making. Now, Xander Bogaerts is making $25 million next year, and I know that people want Xander Bogaerts I know people want the Padres to move on from Xander Bogaerts, but A, they can't because he's under contract. He has a no-trade clause. And B, even if you were to trade Xander Bogaerts, there are 0 teams in Major League Baseball that are going to take on the hefty contract that the Padres gave out to Xander Bogaerts. So now Xander could easily come back next year and have a really good season, but I think in the first 2 years we've seen from him, it's not $25 million worth in my opinion. It's not. Outfielders, they have Fernando at $20 million, so Fernando's contract is kicking in. Jackson Merrill, they're projecting to sign him at $800,000. We talked about that the other day, of extending Jackson Merrill and seeing whether or not he would be interested in doing, getting out of arbitration and signing a contract, kind of like a Ronald Acuna or Ozzie Albies deal, where you sign early and you get paid less money, but you still have more money than you would be paid. He's not going to be paid $800,000 if he signs a contract. Or you can wait and you could bet on yourself and you could see what you do over the next couple of years. And then maybe the number for your contract is in the 200 millions. Who knows what your contract will be if you're Jackson Merrill. So if I'm the Padres, I want to lock that up immediately. Like, I want to make sure that I don't have to worry about Jackson Merrill being out of a Padres uniform. I mean, he's under team control for a long time, so I'm not worried about that aspect of it. But I'm just worried about locking up the core of the team for the long future. And one of those players that they're not projecting, Jeff Sanders, that is Jurickson Profar. Jurickson Profar, they're projecting to not be on this team. So if you look at the outfield right now with the players that they're saying are going to make the roster, Fernando Tatis Jr. is the only player that is making over $1 million. Everybody else is under $1 million, so they're saving a ton of money there. Fernando's at $20 million. Here's another interesting part of Jeff Sanders' projections. Catchers, Luis Campusano is $1.7 million. And they do not have Kyle Higashioka on this list. They have Brett Sullivan for $760,000. So all of this ends up being $198.49 million, which is still a lot of money. But B, it's some of this money is invested into the right places. Jake Cronenworth making $11 million does not seem like it's the right deal for the Padres at the moment. I didn't think Jake had a completely horrible year like he did the year before in 2023, but I didn't think that he had a year that really changed much of anything for me. He did have a better year, and I'm hoping he gets better next year as well. The dead money basically that they have to pay next year is also going to hurt them. They got about $34 million in dead money, meaning they're paying people for doing nothing. Joe Musgrove, unfortunately, with the Tommy John surgery, is going to cost the Padres $20 million. Eric Hosmer, he has one more year. The Padres are paying him for one more year, $12.25 million, and then a Ha-Seong Kim buyout of $2 million himself. So that's the bummer right there. $34 million of dead money where you're giving away money and you are not getting anything in return from that person because they're either hurt, not on the team anymore, or they're injured, or hurt and injured are the same thing. So we'll just go with that. In the end, moral of the story, I think AJ Preller is going to work magic on this contract or on this roster, and I think AJ Preller is going to find and identify the players that either have contract control or they are under contract already and they don't make a ton of money. And AJ Preller is really good at bringing those guys in that are very good role players. They're very good at doing what they're asked to do. And so I would think the Padres are going to make a ton of moves this offseason to try and bolster certain parts of their team as well as fill certain parts of their team that they aren't going to be able to, or that they didn't need to last year, like Jurickson Profar or Kyle Higashioka. So there you go. That is the big old contract breakdown. Thank you, Jeff Sanders, for doing it. If you would like to read the entire article, go to the Union Tribune, look for Jeff Sanders, or go look at the page that says First Look at the Padres 2025 Opening Day Roster. Okay, we are heading to break. When we get back, we'll have a little bit of a potpourri of things, not baseball, but you know what? I'm just going to talk about this for a little bit. Amazon's CEO says something that I kind of agree with, and I know that people are not going to agree with it, so we'll get into that. And if we have some time, I'm going to also talk about Angel Reese real quick, but I'm not sure if we have the time. So stick with us. When we get back, we're going to do the Amazon CEO saying what he said, and then the Daily Gripe, which I think I have a good one today. So stick with me here on 97.3 The Fan.
Quinn and
Final segment of the week for our shows at 97.3 The Fan. Of course, we have Braden Soprenit. I believe he's doing his Sunday show. I hope he's doing a Sunday show because I just said it, but final weekday show of the week for 97.3 The Fan. Thank you for listening. I'm Matt Skraby. This is the Skraby Show. We just did a bunch of breakdown of the Padres roster and what they're looking at contract-wise. And I did get a tweet, and I have to correct something that I said. William sent me this. At Matt Skraby, I think the tax is only in the amount that you go over the CBT. So if they were $10 million over, your 20% tax is $2 million. You are exactly correct because when I said it, I felt really weird about it, but I just went with it. So I appreciate you correcting me because I do want to get it right. That would be crazy to be paying $100 million in taxes. Yeah, that would just be crazy if you're paying $100 million in taxes for a baseball team. So it's not as expensive as I said, but it's still pretty expensive, and you don't want to be paying that at all. All right, this last segment is going to be about a couple different things. We'll see how many we get through. We got time. We'll get through a couple of them. But one of Amazon's top executives. Now, let me start it like this, actually. The work from home movement has been strong over the years. And I am not a person who can work from home because I have to be here every single day. So it's not really anything that I am privy to. But I do know I have many friends. I know many people that are work from home people. And they seem to have really enjoyed getting used to working from home. Now, I also know on the other side of that some people take advantage of the work at home. And some of the people who I know take advantage of the work at home. They may say that they're at their computer, but they're really, going to the grocery store or whatever. It doesn't matter. Going to Disneyland. So Amazon is apparently putting in a 5-day per week in-office policy. And so they were speaking yesterday, and CEO Matt Garman said 9 out of 10 workers he has spoken with support the new policy, which takes effect in January. Those who do not want to return to work 5 days a week, he said, if there are people who just don't work well in that environment and don't want to, that's okay. There are other companies around. Now, people are really crushing him for this, and I'm not really sure why people are crushing this. I think that the work-from-home lifestyle is acceptable some days, but I personally wouldn't, because I'm a guy who comes in here 5 days a week, but I also think it's very important to work with people in the same area. And a lot of the criticism for this, and there are decent criticisms, I have to say, from the people that are against this 5-day in-office policy. And mainly is the criticism from people is that they are less available for work because they spend, an hour commuting or 2 hours commuting a day. So then you're spending, 2 hours or 4 hours commuting a day or whatever. And so they are working less in that time. And they were able to go on meetings and, right when they get up at 8 a.m., they can just hop on a meeting and all of that. Now, I think that's a good point. And if Amazon or these companies decide that they really want to change this to make people come back into the office, then, hey, you got to make meetings that are not in the morning or not at night. You got to make meetings in the middle of the day. I think you have to meet in the middle. And Amazon doesn't seem like they're really willing to meet in the middle. Other companies like Google, Meta, and Microsoft have 2 to 3 day in-office policies. But here's my question for all the people that work from home. Do you not want to go back to work because you want to stay at home and not be bothered by your boss every 5 seconds? Do you not want to go back to work because you're going to have to actually work a little bit more? Do you not want to go back to work because you truly think it's better to be working at home? I would be very curious to see what people say, because I polled a couple of my friends before I did this tonight, and they were honest with me. I asked 5 people that work from home, what is your reason as to why you do not want to go back to work? And three of those five people said it was because they can get away with doing nothing during the day. And they were very honest with me. So I don't know if that is what if that is what's keeping people from wanting to go back to work. I know here at Odyssey, we have Mondays and Fridays is pretty empty. There's not many people in here on Mondays or Fridays, just the people that are on the air doing radio shows. Tuesday, everyone's here. So that's nice. You walk in, you get to see a bunch of people. Wednesday and Thursday, there's a lot of people in here, but not everyone is in here. And I'm not going to blame anyone or say anybody's name or anything, but there are some times, I'm being honest, there are some times when we are sitting here burning the midnight oil working, and we're like, what are these other people doing right now? And I will even say this. I remember when the work at home policy first started for, COVID and everything, and I got a phone call from someone, and they were asking me to help them with something. And I said, I'm not really in a place to help you right now. Why can't you do it? And they said, oh, because I'm driving along the coast right now. It's like, that's not the work at home policy. You should be working where you should be working when you are at work. M. McKee says hybrid is where it's at. Katrina said the flexibility with work from home is everything in maintaining work-life balance. Katrina, answer this. Do you work 40 hours a week from home? Do you work more than 40 hours a week from home? Do you work less than 40 hours a week from home? Trevor says, I have coworkers that commute over an hour plus each way. Now, that is brutal. When I lived in San Francisco, going to college there, I lived outside of the city of San Francisco. So I would have to leave my house at around 5:30 or 6 a.m. just to get to class on time at 9 a.m. And the commute does suck. It does. It's not fun. And I think here in San Diego, on Mondays and Thursdays, when we have Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, I sit around the studio for like an hour and a half because the traffic is terrible going north. Once you get to the 5 from the 805 going north, everything slows down and it's very slow for a good amount of time. So, a 20-mile drive will take me an hour and 15 minutes. And I hate it. I know. I hate it. I really do. And I understand the people who don't want to do it because of commuting. But what I say to that is maybe you can, if you do live that far away from work, maybe you can work something out with your bosses. Maybe you could work something out with your coworkers or something like that. Let's see. Katrina says she works over 40 hours a week and a wide variety of time zones. I do think that there are certain jobs and circumstances that working from home will be a better thing for you, especially if you're working with different time zones. I mean, if you're if you're like a financial person here on the West Coast and you work with people that work in New York, you're up earlier, and so it's not as fun to wake up and be at work at 6 a.m. here when everything's starting in New York at 9 a.m. and then driving to work. So I understand that there are certain positions that I think should be able to do a hybrid type schedule, but I also, in the end, really think that people should. I think that people should come back into the office. It's much nicer. I mean, you get to have fun. And people are saying, oh, well, I get so much less work done in the office. I understand that to an extent, but I don't think you're really getting like 150% more work done at home, because that TV is right there. That refrigerator is right there. And you know what? Oh, I'm just going to go take a walk with the dog real quick. I'll be back in a little bit. And then you sit down and you take 4 hours to do something. Now, I'm generalizing this a lot, but I think when I worked from home after my shoulder surgery, when I worked from home the day after, I didn't like it. It was weird doing the show from home. And it was definitely weird doing the show from home because I fell out of my element. Here in the studio, I have all the computers, I have the microphone, I have the TVs, I have everything all set up. But for me, wasn't for me. And that's okay too. All right, I've wasted enough time. I went too far because I have a daily gripe coming up. We're not going to talk about Angel Reese. We already kind of talked about her. Basically, what I wanted to say about Angel Reese is she is saying that she can't afford her $8,000 rent on her salary from the WNBA. Now, I agree with her. She should be paid more to play in the WNBA. But at the same time, I don't know that you really want to get an $8,000 rent. You know, I have an $8,000 bill every single month in rent to pay. She has a lot of endorsements too. So she's doing fine. She was talking mostly about her WNBA salary. So if we're talking about WNBA salary, I 100% think that they should get paid more. But I wouldn't also pay $8,000 in rent if I didn't have to.
What's annoying Skraby today? Let's find out. It's time for the Daily Gripe.
All right, Daily Gripe today is I listen to broadcasters, and when I listen to broadcasters saying the wrong name instead of the right name, it really bothers me. It gripes me. I trust me, I say things wrong all the time, but I try and get it right. I do want to say their name correctly because as with the last name of Skraby, I know that it's not necessarily going to be easy for everybody to pronounce. So I understand it, but I do try to get something right. I will say this about a podcast I listen to about fantasy football. I love this podcast. I love everybody on the podcast. I'm not going to name the podcast, but there is one of the hosts on the podcast that calls Joe Flacco Joe Flacco every single time. Joe Flacco. Every single time. And it's like, it's his name. It's not his name. His name is Joe Flacco. Everybody says it's Joe Flacco, but you say Joe Flacco. Also, Tua Tagovailoa is, to this person, Tua Tagovailoa, which is also not their name. Not their name. Tagovailoa is not his name. It's Tagovailoa. Vailoa is not their name. I'm not trashing this podcast, seriously, but I think if you're a fantasy football guy, you should probably know how to pronounce the names correctly. I really, every time I hear Joe Flacco, I actually kind of laugh a little bit. But I'm like, dude, it's every single day. And I shouldn't really be talking, so that's why I put it as a daily gripe. All right, thanks to everybody for joining us this week in our first week of the off-season. Back on Monday, more Skraby shows Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thanks to everyone. Have a great night and weekend.